In this Q&A session, we will, because no one else is here, we will be answering a number of questions that that we got a lot of either at GDC or in our Ask Mudstack channel. Joseph is going to be answering these questions primarily and also showing us via his screen what you need to do to answer these questions.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think a good starting point here is to first kind of walk through what happened at GDC. I guess that'd be 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. God, already.
Last week kind of burned by pretty quick. We managed to talk to, about 200 or almost like 300 people. It's like 275, 300 people through that time at GDC, where you got to have some decent conversations around what specific needs people had, and did some demos of what the desktop app was. So a lot of the questions that we got back are some things that a few of you have asked on the Discord channel. One is some really common ones we got were, what are we integrating with? When are we getting into task management? On-premises support was a big one. What if my team needs more data for the different pricing models that we have, and how will this work with outsourced teams? Also, where do we fit into Perforce, Plastic, SEM, and Git LFS? So I'll just hop through each of those real quick. So on the integration end, it's something we'll be working on after our push through the desktop beta that's going to be going on for the next few months. So some of the things that we know we'll be integrating with are Slack, Discord, and Teams. So if there's anybody in Discord that wants to give us more feedback about how you want those integrations to work, we're always open to feedback there, and we'll be gathering it as we get closer towards the end of the desktop beta as well. So some ideas around the integrations we have here are going to be related to approvals or comments, or when people upload things, when people make new versions, we can post messages out to these chat systems, where a lot of teams are already doing some of that review, so they have quick access to mudstack, as well as being able to see all the reviews that they may be doing still in Slack, Discord, or Teams. Some of the other thoughts we have on integration, and I'll go through this a little bit faster since there's a little bit more detail that we have to get into from like a high level and low level. So going into task management for things like Jira, we've heard ClickUp a few times, ShotGrid a few times as well. So those are ones that we're going to be looking into. And on the version control side, we've heard already things like Perforce, Git, LFS, and Plastic, SEM. Since we're mainly working with source assets, or those assets that your artists are going to be working on before they actually go into Engine, some technical artists and teams are looking for ways to move that content directly into Perforce once, or Git or Plastic right when they're done with those files. So when are we getting into task management? It's something we've talked about over the past maybe 3 to 6 months or so. Right now, we're still kind of in early design stage. The big focus for after desktop beta is going to be integrating into task management systems that already exist, mainly because teams are actively using those now. And there's there's a really high floor to the types of functionality that teams need for task management. So it's something that we'll always be asking the community about in terms of how they want task management to be improved from the current systems that they're using. A lot of it is related to making sure they can see the assets when they're setting up tasks or setting up stubs for assets in task management, so that the artist can kind of just drop in the files based off the stub. Think of it like I have a high poly asset, a low poly asset, a rigged asset, animated, things like that, and I can just drop in the files in those sections and get those stages completed. It's something we want to focus on more towards the end of the year, more than likely.
Great.
On-premises support. So on-premises support for some of the larger teams or for some of the teams that really care about their IP, they were asking us about this, where instead of using our cloud, they would essentially have the full app on their internal network drives and then run the app from there. From an enterprise standpoint, we're still considering that, but it's just with a lot of precautions. We can technically do something like that, but there's a lot of custom work and support needed to maintain that. Generally, we'll focus on cloud for right now. So what if my team needs more data? So this is actually an interesting one from a few different people that we talked to. One specific group was dealing with large amounts of photogrammetry data, which was to the tune of 120 terabytes worth of data, and it was just like a 4-person team. So if in the event that there's anything like that, if you feel like the data is not enough, please come talk with us. For small teams with large sets of data, we can figure out a way to solution that out together or go through a partnership process. So how will this work with outsourced teams is another big question that we had. So in this case, we have some of those systems already built in with how we set up workspaces and workspace permissions and how you can assign users to specific workspaces or into your account and give them specific provisions and permissions. So as more feedback comes in here, we'll be adding some more finite controls around permissions themselves. So can people view this specific outside of just there is a role and it has preset permissions? You actually can control that by creating custom roles and then defining the permissions within that. That's something we'll probably deal with post the integration cycle that we'll be working on in Q3. And where do you fit in with Perforce, Plastic SEM, Git LFS? For this is something that technical artists asked us about a lot, mainly because they may already be using these things and they're looking to see like what differentiates us from these. So our primary focus is on the management of source assets. So your ZBrush files, Photoshop files, your Maya ASCII binary files, your Blender files, right? A lot of these are going to be iterated on in much more often than files that go in engine at that point, and you have to hand off. To between like a character artist, texture artist, rigger, different things like that, more times than you do once it goes into engine, because you're dealing with mainly designers at that point, and technical artists at that point as well. So our version control is specifically built for those source assets, and once you're done with the source asset, once it's completed and you have your output files, those output files go from our system into like a Perforce Plastic SEM or Git LFS. Really simplifies the workflow that we're doing earlier on. So those are like some of the main questions we got from our time at GDC. Some other interesting things, I think we've made some updates to the website. So we can go ahead and take a look at that as well. Yeah, so just looking over at the at our website, well, we have a new section for the desktop beta. This was launched back right before GDC, but just to kind of show what it is for people that haven't seen the site in a while. You'll see some additional information around what we have on our roadmap for the desktop beta, and kind of some planned dates around where we anticipate these releases to be. It's not necessarily a hard set in stone date, but it's something where we plan these phases to be. The way that the phases are structured, they're pretty much solidified at this point. So I'll just walk through an idea of what each of these phases do. So phase 1 is a focus on a UI overhaul. So this is getting us to prep up for the desktop app, making sure that we have all of our UI in place, for new search functionality, in terms of the local side as well as the cloud side, making sure local and cloud feels the same when you're in the experience. Some new UX for filtering, new UX for a grid view or a list view to quickly view your assets a little bit easier in our system, and also showing file details before you actually go into a file itself. So it provides a little bit more information, similar to how the find or get info on a Mac, or looking at the file details of a file in Explorer work. So phase 2 is getting that local workflow set up. So what this allows users to do, it'll allow you to essentially look at or add directories to mudstack from your local desktop. This can be network drives as well, where we at that point are going to be observing that directory, and if you make any changes to that directory, it's represented within mudstack. You have the ability to upload files to the cloud and download files from the cloud down to a set folder. I believe it's going to be in the downloads folder right now for phase 2, and then we'll allow for a little bit more configuration there in later phases. When we hit this April 18th date, that will be our open beta date as well. So everybody that has signed up for the beta in this area up top, you'll have access to the beta. We'll be sending out an executable or a DMG file for download at that point. So phase 3, this is related to our selective syncing and subscribing. So this is when we start to bring in some of that Google Drive, Dropbox type of functionality into our system, where we'll auto update files as needed. And when you're pushing things up, it auto updates as well. And then phase 4, going into the version control side. So this is where, if you've seen any of the demos that we've had previously, this is where the file first version control starts coming into play. We'll bring that into the asset details area and the file details area so that you can see all that information, as well as improve some of the syncing processes that version control provides to. And then phase 5 is going to be related to the annotation controls. So this is marking up within or without the application itself, and making sure feedback is a lot easier to make and add in our system. And once that phase 5 is done, we'll be going to a full release instead of just a beta release. Yep. And so this next week we'll be going through our little private beta phase. So for some of the private beta testers, they'll get access to it and help us with some targeted testing before we launch it out to the public. So I think that goes to our next section, Lila. I think we had a few questions from our Ask Mudstack chat.
We did. We had a number, and while they were answered via text, it does seem like it could be helpful to have them answered in a visual format as well. Mm-hmm. How would you feel about me asking you the question and then you going ahead and answering them?
Go for it.
Awesome. Okay, so question 1. Could somebody please elaborate on what pipeline management feature means?
Yeah, so I think there are actually a few other questions that were kind of around this too in Ask Mudstack. So one of them was is our platform something that I could integrate into our pipeline for storing, reviewing, and managing assets, or will pipeline management make it possible? How would it work? I think those are all kind of bundled together. So so essentially pipeline management is around configuring the art production pipeline by defining stages and steps inside of our application to complete certain assets. So for any artists out there, they'll know this, an asset is actually multiple files all combined into one to create something. So you've got a model, you've got materials, and what's in a material? A shader could be in there, textures could be in there. So we've got rigs, animations, all of this stuff combining together to make this one asset. We want to make sure that some of that is in a streamlined workflow in our system. At some point, this parts of these will get introduced into our system in terms of how we want to set up relationships between assets, and we'll start bringing some more of that feature set together as time goes on. This is something that we'll be talking with our customer base, with all of you as we're working through that. That'll probably be sometime later next year, or later this year, early next year. When we start walking through some of that functionality.
Okay, then on to the next question. The next question is, could we eventually communicate with mudstack from a script such as the cloud or desktop app? And if so, will there be any Python or like REST API?
Yeah, so our platform actively uses a REST API for any interactions we do with our application to our DBs. So we want to expose that for anybody else. If you guys want to use that, we can pass out a API key, and then you'll have access to that functionality as well. So this will be things like looking for files, making new versions, deleting versions, all the basic file functionality that you see in our application is all via that REST API. At the desktop side, we'll have CLI commands for anything local. So if you have any needs outside of what we currently offer, please send them to us. We're still working on gathering more information from customers to figure out what the major needs are, so we can attack those with some additional API controls.
Is mudstack .usd or .gltf format supported?
.usd files are not currently supported from a rendering standpoint, but all files are supported from a management standpoint. So you can create new versions with any file type, or rename, or do any of that basic functionality that we have in our system. But being able to see it inside of the application and tumble around it. GLTF, I believe, has a bug that we're resolving, so that is supported. There's just a bug that we need to resolve for that one. USD is not currently supported right now, but we've had a few requests from that as well. Some other ones that we're actively looking into are going to be related around like my ASCII and my binary files, Blender files, things like that.
Okay, great. I also see it sounds like if we're looking for additional formats to be rendered on our platform, we can make feature requests on our feedback site on Canny, right?
Yes. So mudstack.canny.io. We have a feature requests section over there, as well as our change log. So you can see everything that's going on from a feature release standpoint and what other people are asking for. You can upvote posts over there or create new ones. Most of our dev team is decently active over there. So you'll see Nachi, Jordan, and I over there as well, just kind of asking for additional information and things like that. All that stuff, like as we get more votes for specific features, it increases the priority that we have internally as well.
Okay, great. Will it be possible to archive finished projects in any way in the future?
Yep. So I think this question is related to mainly storage management, right? At some point, your source assets you'll have a lot of versions. It'll be a lot of data. So how do we bring that back down so that it's reasonable to maintain either in mudstack or maintain off the cloud on a network drive that's internal, right? So we have some manual processes available, and we'll be working through that in pieces around like phase 4 for flattening. So when we're thinking about version flattening, you're removing previous versions that you no longer need. That'll help save on a lot of space for all the different files you have. In the event that you want to move things off to a local drive, you have the ability to do so and then remove it from mudstack. Generally not advised because you'll be losing a lot of the tags and library controls that make it a lot easier to recover those files later on.
Okay, well, when sharing workspaces, another person asked, where should we look to see what workspaces we're part of?
Yep. So the workspace controls actually have a little invite tag on it. So if you ever get invited to new workspaces or invited to new accounts, you actually see that notification up in the application itself. And we're going to work on additional improvements to that to make sure it's a little bit more real time than it is right now. But within the workspace controls, you have visibility and access to all of that.
Is there a maximum number of assets we can add to our account? And if so, where can we find this number?
Yep. So this is actually something that we're going to be changing about our application. What we previously had for some general restrictions was an asset count. So you could only have X amount of assets for a specific price point. We're going to be removing that shortly. So if we haven't already, this should no longer be an issue with any team, regardless if you have a free or paid account.
Okay, great. Is the 5 collaborator limit per workspace or per account the one that's for the free tier?
Yep. So this is per account. The account is what controls access to workspaces. The free tier does not have controls around what you can do with each user in each workspace, but you can create additional workspaces and things like that.
This next question is actually connected to the question we had earlier about, .usd files, but what file types are supported on Mudstack?
Yep. So like we kind of talked about before, there's 2 ways to define support. One is from a file management side, so adding tags, versions, libraries, going through the basic controls like your syncing and all that stuff. That's file agnostic. So we will support any file type that you have available that you're uploading to our platform. The rendering end right now is available to a few specific file types, but we'll constantly be growing this list as needs arise and as we target different types of artists. So audio engineers, for example, or people that are editing videos or cutscenes. This could be in the texture area when you're talking about Photoshop and Substance Painter and things like that as well. So the current list is as follows. Video, we support MP4 and I believe MOV as well. Audio is MP3. Image, we have a few different things for uncompressed files like targ and bitmap, and JPEG and PNG as well. And on the 3D side, it's OBJ, FBX, and GLTF. But like I said before, it's bugged right now, so it needs a little update. Also, if you have any specific file types that you want supported that aren't on this list, just let us know, and we'll make sure to support these for additional rendering support.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, and people can just go right over to Canny to do that. This is the final question. So how can someone get access to the desktop client right now?
Yep. So how do you get access? You join our beta. So I'll pull this site up again here. And what you'll see is mudstack.com/desktop. Just go to that. You'll have a little email space that you can enter. Just enter your email and then click the sign up button. That will sign you up for the desktop. While it's in open beta, you'll more than likely just get an email directly back from our system and give you access to the ability to use our beta platform.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of the questions from Ask Mudstack. I'm glad that we were able to record all of those. And I think it's just time for the closing statements.
Yep. So, I just want to thank everybody for listening to us on this video recording. If you have any other questions, drop them in Ask Mudstack so we can answer it. If you have any feature requests, go to mudstack.canny.io and drop your feature requests over there too. We may direct you in Ask Mudstack to go there if it is a feature request there too. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you again soon.